Minerva is, everyone in this room, and more will be coming, but everyone in this room is a leader in their community. Minerva has been instrumental, as I call it, the Latino arm of Black Lives Matter. She has fought for Latino families who have had loved ones who've been killed by the sheriffs and LAPD. What started her activism in that area, she's an actor as well, a very talented actor, was that she lost her good friend Vanessa Marquez. She was killed by South Pasadena police. And that's how I meet a lot of you, through the stories that we cover. When I heard about Vanessa, who first made her mark in TV as being a very lovely student in Stand and Deliver, and then went on to star in ER and be a really strong working actor. She and Minerva were close best friends. So when I heard about that on my alma mater, KNX and KFWB merged, I rolled up and I saw her friends on the sidewalk. And when I appeared, they assumed that I was one of them, and I took a moment to tell them, you know, I'm actually here as a journalist who knew her work. And from that time, I have followed the work that Vanessa has done, and most recently she produced a play that documents the families who have lost loved ones. You know, one of them was the family whose Trader Joe, young Nellie, died from a very controversial police bullet that was fired into the Trader Joe's in Eagle Rock. They have now become a family. So I'm mentioning Minerva, but I can go through the whole room with Evelyn, etc. And I hope today that our panelists get to equally know the people who are sitting in the audience. It was very important for me to bring Eden because he represents what all of you represent. He didn't wait to be anointed. He just started doing the work. The same way Minerva has, the same way Evelyn has, etc., etc., etc. So this is a family of activism right in this room and a good resource for each other. And that is our primary mission as a community newspaper, is to form those relationships, not just with us, but to, as you read our articles, to say, I didn't know about this person's work. I didn't know about the legislation that Luz Rivas is putting forward. Excuse me. So let's begin, a half hour late, but it was well worth the wait for all of you to be queued. I want to begin, before I introduce Eden, with some clips talking about social media, as well as being the person who immediately responds to any act of violence against a street vendor. If you go on his Twitter accounts or his Facebook pages, you'll see a number of images and a number of accounts. So hopefully the technology gods are shining on us and we won't have those glitches, and we can just begin by looking at some of what he has posted online.
This is Brianna Pillman, and this is her dad, Nick Pillman. Today we're real quick. Before we go about this case, is that your problem?
Is that like, I think your voice sounds familiar.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What consequences did she receive for this? I mean, it's still you
I'm
talking.
not here to talk about my personal life.
I mean, did you see what she did?
Is that why you're here?
No, it's not. I just found out from over here.
Okay. Don't know anything.
Yeah. I mean, did you see the video?
Anything else from me, sir?
Did you see the
Sounds a
video?
little
I'll show you the video.
distorted.
Okay. Because now when you're able to get to racist to copy to tell them that they're look at the video. Look at the video. Look at the video. That's your dad. That's your dad. What consequences did you deliver? Huh? What consequences did you deliver? What's your biggest difference? Let's go. Let's go. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. You should be behind bars. Yeah, she should be behind bars. Yeah, she should be behind bars.
Wait, we're reporting something?
Yeah, we called you out. We said, you see,
Reporting something that your daughter
you're
did?
You're gonna be exposed. Bigot. Fucking bigot. That's how you raise your daughter. That's how you raise your daughter. Detective Gilman. You bigot.
His daughter's and
Okay, since we're having sound problems, I'm so sorry. It's hard to hear the meeting, so let's stop. Stop and give you a minute to explain what happened, because I don't think that they could hear what was going on. Yeah, just stop. Lift it up. That position. Okay.
Check. Thank you.
Okay, just get short and sweet.
Yeah. So this happened in February 20 this year. There was a street vendor in San Diego. He was selling food late at night, and when four women approached him, started calling him an illegal, they started eating his food without his consent, and they verbally assaulted him. So what happened is that usually these people get consequences from our actions, and so we didn't forget. Months went by, and a couple of leads led us to one of their fathers who lives in Rancho Cucamonga and is a detective for the Upland Police Department. And turns out that he is a hardcore conservative, and on his Facebook he would mention how this country is going into ruins because of the criminals crossing the border. So obviously the apple didn't fall far from the tree. So, and that also turns out that this detective, when he was a police officer, he shot an unarmed 18-year-old Mexican 10 times while on the floor. And so, yeah, we approached him here and we confronted him to hold him accountable. You know, we wanted to see what type of consequences he gave his daughter, but it turns out that he pretty much applauded this behavior from his daughter. And this is what's regarding this case, and it's still ongoing.
I was trying to follow that when she was licking her fingers and putting her hands in the salsa and putting them back into, so she was basically ruining his product to be sold on that day.
Yeah.
And so you went to the police station, you just walked in, asked to speak to her father. I could hear you saying, is this how you raised her? And he refused to, which is pretty bold, because, but Eden, you know, as he wrote in some of his, you know, takes a wolf to catch a wolf. And that's what he does. So for most of us, we would probably just be turned away, ask what we wanted, and not be able to penetrate. But Eden manages to get in. Okay, this next one, it's labeled, saw these kids harassing someone while they were taking the trash out at work, recognize them. So why don't we start with that?
24, he's coming back. Fuck Sleepy Joe, send those illegals back. Send the illegals back. Send those illegals back. Papales. Señorita, papales.
keep talking. Keep talking.
Oh, that is those loads.
I'm over here, mom, to you that shit.
Okay, so that one in particular concerns me a lot. Because when we talk about, you know, attacks on the vulnerable communities, and we see the next generation doing the same thing, it's this kind of hate is handed down. And you know, there's a black driver, you know, and it crosses all lines. And I don't know what high school that was at.
This was also in Rancho Cucamonga. This was a group of kids. This one, a lot of worms came out of this can. The driver, his name is Trey Sellers. Turns out that he was, when he was 20 years old, he was raping a 12-year-old in a relationship with a 12-year-old, and we exposed that. He would do hardcore pranks. He would walk up to people while they're at the bank and say, "Give me all your money, I have a gun in my waist," and they say it's a joke. These were not paid actors. We talked to the victims. Because of the community pressure, it took months, but he was finally arrested. I believe right now he's out on bail. And also the passenger in the back seat, his name's Diego, he actually ended up apologizing, which was kind of different to see. He apologized, and not only did he apologize, but he started voluntarily going out there and helping street vendors, and I ended up going out there with him, and he's still trying to find redemption in what he did, because this video, I believe, is about 1.5 years old.
Okay, shoot to the next one, which is very recent. And basically that started because she just wanted free food.
Yeah.
She didn't want to pay for her food.
Correct.
And so her response to that was to try to destroy their cart,
Yeah.
their table, and start hitting the female vendor, right?
Yes, this wasn't the first time she had done this. When you buy tacos at a usual taco stand, you first they give you the taco, then you put the cilantro and the cebolla, and then you pay. So she was known to basically get her food and just drive away and not pay. And this time, the vendor, he decided to document the whole thing because he was just tired of it.
Saul, I see you walk back. Did you not get the other part of this where her boss comes and tries to go, okay, good. Because you told me you were going to walk away when you were done. Okay, the boss called you, eh?
The company where she works not only terminated her, but they came with us today.
Already terminated. So we are here with the CEO of Simplify, and even though this wasn't Houston or Simplify's fault, they have terminated the employee that did this to the female street vendors. And not only that, this Friday, they are going to have a buyout, and it's all paid for already, and the vendors will be catering to all their employees. And also they brought their truck here, they could go for the blood that before the street vendors here, and they're doing the right thing, even though they didn't have to. So, I'm going to use action.
Now, thank you. We really like to support our community. Thank you for the cost that you in the bill for even because the right thing needs to be done. What happened to that lady was not right, and we know the bill to the activity search, and we're here to support the community. We want to do the right thing. Absolutely support your cause. What these people are doing on Friday, they'll be serving everybody that uses logistics.
Okay, so as I said earlier, just don't want to example the injustices and what's going out there. We just published a story 2 days ago of a series of taco vendors who have been robbed. And so unfortunately, it continues to go on. But with that are solutions. And one thing I have been very impressed with Eden is that he does organize these buyouts for them, does raise money for them, because this is their livelihood. And I have seen him also present them with hand washing stations, portable hand washing stations, and new carts. So I wanted to share with you, what motivates him. And so he helped me out because I went on his Facebook page and, thought, I don't have to request a formal bio, right? So I texted him and said, well, thank you. I don't have to write your introduction now. You just wrote it for me. And so what Eden wrote on his Facebook page, he said, people ask me why I'm so passionate about street vendors. When I was a kid, can you hear me? I talk loud, my old broadcasting voice. Now I'm half deaf, like most radio people wind up being. When I was a kid, early 2000s, I used to be left home alone a lot. There were times I would only survive off of Hot Pockets, but when that ice cream man would ring that bell, it would make my day. Running out screaming, trying to catch their attention because it was like my only chance of getting a snack. Till this day, it still doesn't register on how someone can attack or rob someone like that. Last year, a fruit vendor was killed during a robbery right in front of his 7-year-old daughter. A witness sent me a video of him on the floor next to his fruit cart. It changed me. I vowed to set a goal for this not to happen again. 1 year later, there has not been one murder in LA County toward a street vendor. If you're not out there with us wearing a bulletproof vest with a blower and watts protecting our vendors, your criticism doesn't hold any merit. Our vendors deserve respect, and to protect the sheep, you gotta catch the wolf. And it takes a wolf to catch a wolf. You understand? Our strategy is working, and we will continue. So in that spirit, Eden, and we're gonna try to kind of catch up. So, you know, give us your best, strong 10, 11, 12 minutes. And talking about your methods, because, you know, the effectiveness that you bring also brings a title that some don't necessarily view as positive, and that is being a vigilante by any means necessary, right? Rather than the traditional, oh, let's make a police report, let's see if we can, you know, press charges. Is the Roque family here? The Roque supporters here? Thank you for coming. I want people to meet them because they have tried exactly to do that with the family, the Roque family, who most definitely suffered a hate crime, but a judge threw it out, threw all the hate enhancements out. They went through the normal procedures, right? I think if you were aware of that case, you probably would have showed up in front of that guy's house, brought a bonda, you know, called his employer, blasted him on social media. So a lot of your activity does cause people to actually lose jobs and lose their livelihoods. At any point, have you ever considered that their bad mistake in judgment is now costing them a loss of a job to their families?
Definitely, and there's times that we try to approach these people to try to make amends prior to us putting them online, but when we see that they're unapologetic and it seems like it may happen again, then that's when we have to expose them. We have to show them that there's different consequences. You know, as much as me growing up in the hood, as much as when I see these attacks, instead of responding with violence, these are basically the new consequences, you know, and it's not just myself, this is definitely a team effort. It's the community that's tired of it. You know, in the past 10 years, street vendor attacks have spiked 300%. And now the message that we want to send out to people is that if you're thinking about attacking the street vendor, you know, these are the consequences that you might face. You know, if you are working for a high-end company and you know, that can be taken away too. Because what you're doing to this person, especially street vendors who are small business owners, they have children to feed, right? And I know some people might not agree with it, but I always remember this quote by Malcolm X where he said, you know, justice for us is not going to come through legislation, it's not going to come through a federal judge, it's not going to come through a state legislator, it's going to come by the community through the people rising up. And that's exactly what's happening now. We're just tired of it. We're sick and tired of it, and we, like you mentioned, my goal is to prevent a death. You know, my girlfriend and I meeting the family of the vendor who was shot and killed in front of his 7-year-old daughter, and yet the murderers have not been caught, sheriffs have not been a big help. It took public outcry for the 7-year-old to receive therapy. Now they're cutting it off again. That's basically what we want to prevent. You know, we want to prevent that. We want to prevent a family having to bury their dad, bury their husband, which is why we started expanding our resources. And what you see on social media, I'll be honest with you, it's probably 20% of the work that we actually do. Providing security, we no longer post videos or pictures of where our security is at. Last night, the Brown Berets were also have joined us, and they're out in South Central and Watts and standing next to a vendor, going back to preventing a death. But we also help them with permits. We also help them with legal cards. We also help them right now. We're fighting with the LA Board of Supervisors, trying to implement the micro enterprise home kitchen, which will, instead of an elotero having to rent out a commissary or an industrial kitchen, they can use their home to be inspected once a year, where they can use that as a representation and be able to legally sell on the streets. Also, a lot of people don't know that taco stands don't have a pathway to permits. The permits do not exist. When I've sat down with the director of Department of Public Health, Lisa Frias, she has no explanation up to why that they don't exist. The only way a taqueria can get a permit is through a city event, for example, a farmer's market. And when I asked her what is the reason that a taqueria can get a permit inside of a city event but not outside, and I get it. I was like, is it because of insurance purposes? And she says, no, I just don't know. It's just state law. So because we're ready to back them up with insurance and everything, and then they still are not giving them that pathway. And then when you look at who's funding these people, property owners, restaurant owners who are attacking street vendors, and that is the reason why a lot of politicians, and it's so hard, and I can't even sit here and tell you, hey, vote for mayors or vote for council members that support street vendors, because guess what? What I do for my job, I manage political campaigns. I've had friends who we've helped win their elections. Literally last year, we helped the mayor of El Monte win her election, and she was my friend. As soon as she got elected, she started texting me, telling me, hey, I have a lot of these restaurant owners on my back. I have these property owners on my back. She started a crackdown on street vendors. Now in El Monte, no one can sell. She's been almost getting people arrested. Same thing with Huntington Park. The mayor of Huntington Park, Meredith Sanabria, not only has she been arresting vendors, taking away their cards with their permits, she's been, if you have a lonchera, for example, Taco La Guerra, they had a taco truck on Florence, she painted the curb red to prevent them from selling. And this is someone that I considered a friend for 6-7 years. I don't even know what to say anymore. I don't even know what to tell people anymore, but to the point where we're going to have to rise up now, not tomorrow, not an election day, and that's what we're doing now. And even though the mayor of Huntington Park, we've publicly ousted her too, she's raiding my friends' homes, activists for no reason. And they're trying to shut us down, but we're not gonna let that happen. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's going on with the street vendors.
Do you have any empathy for the business owner who has to pay their rent, has to pay their employees? King Taco is an example that started, I believe, with a truck. They could be viewed the same way as a vendor, but then became brick and mortar. What is the solution? Because certainly, Latino restaurants, etc., would react viscerally to someone setting up very near after, they have the high pressure of taxes, etc. Is there a solution where both can exist responsibly and harmoniously?
Till this day, we've never attacked a restaurant owner that is against street vending. What we've had against restaurant owners when they go outside and they start condescendingly attacking vendors, calling them illegals or just attacking them physically. I understand that, but like you mentioned, we all start somewhere. In-N-Out started as street vendors. Carl's Jr. started as street vendors. King Taco started off as street vendors. And if you're really worried about taxes, let me show you the taxes that Walmart is dodging. Let me show you the taxes that Amazon is dodging. How about all the businesses that run from home, making millions from home, selling products on Amazon without permits? Now, it seems vindictive that you're coming after it. I've come to the conclusion that people are not against street vendors because of taxes. People are against street vendors because of the aesthetic. They just don't like it. It's an eyesore for them, right? They just don't like to see it. But this happens, for example, my friend owns 3 barbershops in Las Vegas. He just opened his 3rd one, and he's getting attacked by a beauty salon that's 2 blocks away. And he has all his permits. I mean, obviously he has everything he needs to open he has a brick and mortar. So it seems like this happens regardless whether you have your permits or you have your brick and mortar or not. I mean, my friend is constantly getting attacked by this beauty salon. So that's what needs to stop. Como decimos en español, el sol sale para todos. People try to kill the competition. But if you go to a mall, you have a food court, you have 10 restaurants there, and they're all doing great. You know, so that's what I tell restaurant owners. If you're really worried about taxes, worry about the corporations dodging taxes. Amazon, Netflix don't pay any federal taxes. You and I pay more federal taxes than Netflix. So that's what we need to look at. And to give them a shot. And they are. We have, for example, Taco Los Palomos in El Monte just opened up their restaurant. And they went through a lot. So you give them a shot, you know, they will end up having that brick and mortar. But like I just mentioned, even if they do have that brick and mortar, they still have to go through the same struggles of basically turf wars.
Okay, that's a whole big, large, and we want to, you know, wrap back to expressions of hate on LA's most vulnerable Latino populations. It's not just Latino populations, as the Roque family has experienced, it's Asian populations. I mean, racism exists, crosses over, can be, you know, the same race against each other. It can be against gay communities. It can, you know, the human condition, unfortunately, when you travel, as I've had the fortune to do, you'll find in, you know, different countries where the North looks down on the South because the South is darker. And, you know, you see that in Italy, you see that in Spain. So the horrible human condition that somehow has to have a pecking order and somehow has to view people as lesser than and think that they can't fight back. So you are giving them and teaching them the power of some of your videos that I've seen. You don't see the same fear than when I initially saw these attacks. So can you speak to that sort of as your last word? So I want Luz to respond to a lot of this about, you know, can you legislate this away?
Let me understand your question real quick. So you're saying,
sorry.
no, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is, you know, you have given them the tools that you go and you know, been there and you have, you know, set up security next to them, you know, does that take away some of the fear from what exists like these, you know, teenage girls, the daughter of the police officer who obviously felt that these people couldn't fight back, and it was a big joke, you know, to her and her friends. And then I noted the truck that wasn't in there that had an African American woman who was hurling racial slurs. But once you went after her online, she came back very sheepishly to apologize. So you are, you know, moving that needle, right, and giving people sort of the tools. But do you agree it is because people think that these are people who are powerless?
Yeah, what we are going through right now, especially our folks from Mexico, Guatemala, our indigenous people south of this European border, is this stigma, right, that people think that why can't you just do it the right way? And there's a lot of xenophobia where they just, like you said, you know, they look at us in a condescending manner. And what we are trying to do now is not just to make them feel safe, to make them feel like they are protected, make them feel like, you know, they're not alone, but to also understand that they have a right to be here. They are indigenous to this continent. But how can we stop this? I think just through education, educating our kids, educating our next generation to have that empathy, to not look at someone because they came illegally or not. We shouldn't treat people any different. And I think that's basically what it comes down to. A lot of our folks are getting told to go back to Mexico. A lot of folks are being called illegals. But, you know, I learned through education, I learned from a younger age that not only did the U.S., this is something I want everyone to know, that this country that we're in, the reason why a lot of our folks come here is because we cannot get overthrown by the United States living in the United States. For example, in Guatemala, in 1954, we actually had a progressive president, and the CIA, and these are all declassified documents, the CIA actually overthrew this president, keeping Guatemala poor. So them keeping Guatemala poor and causing this migration crisis is what we see now today. Can people wait 10 years to have $5,000 in their bank account to be able to come here legally? No. Also the drug war. The drug war that Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan started, that caused another migration crisis from Mexico to here because now people are escaping cartel bandits out there. But when you ask someone who's a bigot or a xenophobe, they look at us like non-human. And that's sad, but through education, I think that's what's gonna eventually reduce these attacks, these verbal attacks, these racial attacks, unless we do something drastic.
And we see how fast education happens, in one generation, right? So, my grandparents, came from Guanajuato and Chihuahua, respectively, different sides, right? And so I often, when we get into these discussions, when we talk to Mexican elite, I feel like that's part of the resentment that we were able to jump up so quickly when their caste system is so strong there. That's a whole other discussion. Please, there'll be more questions, et cetera, and engagement. So Luz, thank you for your patience. Thank you, Anthony, who got here early. So Luz Rivas talking about education. I mean, she's education on steroids, right? She's a member of the Democratic Party that serves in the California State Assembly for the 39th State Assembly District, which includes where you're sitting, San Fernando, Silmar, and Pacoima, the Northeast Valley. She's from LA. She earned a degree in electrical engineering from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, worked for Motorola, then earned a Master of Education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She founded a very progressive organization, very impressive organization, the DIY Girls, based in Pacoima in LA, to encourage school-age girls, starting very young, to pursue careers in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This year alone, she sent 11 bills to the governor, all of which were signed. What a feat that is. Among them, and I, for time purposes, didn't want to roll through all of them, but one that I loved, that would have fit perfectly with one of our very first sessions, was the use of terms that we call ourselves and other people call ourselves, and we lifted that issue of whether or not these terms, whether they're cariños or they're actually hurtful or harmful, and actually have a discussion with a PhD from Mexico who happens to be a linguist teaching at CSUN right now. But among them, it was to eliminate the derogatory term aliens from all state laws. Can you do that for Media Next, please? She created the Interagency Council on Homelessness. Big issue for our community. What happened at the Silmar makeshift trailer park, those folks are homeless now. As our reporter can tell you, the fortunate ones are right now in tiny homes, but they're worried about when their time runs out, where they're going to go. She created a process to identify dual language learners, identify homeless youth to agency and services, to make California state election laws consistent with the Constitution. So, she's trying to take care of a lot of things that relate to this community. So I just want to begin with the big picture. This whole issue that we're talking about on attacks on the Latino community and all vulnerable communities, can you legislate this away?
First, thank you, Diana. Thank you, San Fernando Sun, for inviting me to participate in this panel. First, I see some other electeds in the audience, friends, former San Fernando Mayor Sylvia Ballin, and current City Council member and former Assembly member in my seat, Cindy Montañez, two other electeds in the audience that have worked very hard on these issues. representing San Fernando and the Northeast Valley. Just want to give a shout out to them. But you know, I've represented this community for a little over 5 years. As you mentioned, I grew up here. I'm from Pacoima originally, currently live in Silmar. We lived in San Fernando when I was a kid. We moved around a lot in this community because I grew up with a single mom that was divorced when I was a baby, and we couldn't afford to buy a home. So we lived in the back house, like many people here do. Now they call them ADUs, right? But back in the day, it was the back house, the garage that's converted. And that's how I grew up, but moving around a lot because we couldn't afford a home even back then. You know, I grew up with a lot of my mom's friends or neighbors or community members that we all hustled, right? We had like, people at Puestos in the swap meet, the San Fernando swap meet, you know, selling something. I used to work at the swap meet when I was a kid, helping the owners, and just, they're very entrepreneurial, right? They can rent this little space and sell whatever product they're doing, and it's an opportunity to get started as an entrepreneur. You know, street vendors, you know, I love the fruit and the tacos and everything, right? So it's part of our culture, you know, the countries that our parents come from. Even when I went away for college, you know, would go to New York City, which I lived for a little bit in New York City. Over there, there's hot dog vendors. That it's permitted, right? There's hot dog vendors and all these other products they sell in the biggest city in the country, right? And then here, coming back to Los Angeles, even our state, it's just, why don't we have a system that also permits this? Why isn't it accepted here, right? And when I entered the state legislature my first year in 2018, then Senator Ricardo Lara had a bill, it's SB 946, that for sidewalk vendors, some of you might be familiar with it. You know, it allowed local jurisdictions to adopt a program to regulate sidewalk vendors, right? Because before we didn't have that, and at the time, or for many years, police were going and like arresting the street vendors and taking all of their products away, right? And so members of the Latino caucus in the legislature came up with a bill like that, working with the counties and local governments to figure out a way to, you know, that there would be a pathway, right, to a permit for a street vendor. But then last year, Senator Lina Gonzalez from Long Beach, she introduced another bill, which I also supported and was a Latino caucus priority. That was SB 972, that would, you know, there were some issues with the bill, the previous bill, right? And this happens to us a lot. You know, someone introduces something, it gets signed into law. Once it gets down to the local level, there's all these implementation issues. So we introduced another bill to try to fix those issues. You know, what Senator Gonzalez and her bill tried to do was like eliminate unnecessary and expensive equipment requirements for sidewalk vendors, right? Because then the counties or the local jurisdictions started putting all these requirements that are too expensive, right? And would pretty much put the sidewalk vendors out of business. And that's what we have done at the state level, and there's still a lot more work to do. Like you're saying, can we legislate this? We do try, right? We do, and we do get a lot of pushback from local governments, right? That don't want to be told what to do by the state. And even when these bills are going through the legislature, you know, we have a lot of activists that come and try to convince assembly members and senators that don't want to vote for this because they're getting so much, you know, so many calls and emails from their constituents or like the small restaurants asking them not to vote for this, that we should just get rid of street vending in California. I think, unfortunately, I have some calls.
So that we can mount a proper response in the community, whether it's the Black community, Latino community, we can start to get resources and outreach through the Board of Supervisors if we know that there's a problem. One thing I'd like to talk about, which was also before my time, but a study on data collection, is during 9/11, there were a lot of attacks against Muslim people or Middle Eastern people. But due to accurate reporting, we found that the attacks also include Asian people. And they also included people that were just not Muslim at all. That they were actually going after people just on the way that they looked. And from that reporting, we could mount a response on 9/11 to say that Asian people need more protections, or people that dress a certain way need more protections. So that's the power of data collection and how it can actually be put into action. So I just wanted to reiterate that. As I mentioned, we have a program called LA versus Hate, but within that, there's also a way for people to get help through our 211 hotline. Has anybody ever heard of 211? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, great. So with 211, you can either call the hotline like 911, or you can go online through 211.org in order to start a case. And what happens is, this is a way that things get reported. Now, I'm not going to go through all the details on what's a hate crime and what's a hate act. That's what 211 does when they take a case. They're able to quantify the information and put it into a category of a hate act or a hate crime. But what you need to know is that once you have a case number, you'll be working with a care worker or a caseworker who will handle your situation. And the benefits of this is that you can get compensated. You can get compensated with relocation. You can get compensated with medical bills. And unfortunately, if it came down to that, you could also get compensated with funeral expenses. And it's all through this program that we offer. All that's required is that you work with a caseworker. They will be the bridge with law enforcement, because sometimes that's sticky, or people don't feel that law enforcement's really going to listen to them. That's what 211 is for. And so this is a way that people can actually get help, because I realize that people feel that sometimes it's hopeless, or you feel that the police aren't going to listen to you. But through this program, you can actually get some real assistance. We recently had our mural revealed down in Long Beach about maybe 2 weeks ago, where one of our speakers was an LGBTQ fellow named Freddie, who had been victimized in his community, in his complex, for like 5 or 6 years. His neighbors beat up on him, management wouldn't do anything for him, and he finally got some relief through our program. And Freddie was relocated out of his bad situation. So, in closing, I just want to let people know that LA County cares. LA County hears the Latino community. LA County hears the Black community. LA County hears the Asian community. And we're here to champion for the LGBT community as well. So we have a full wheelhouse, and we're not going to be giving up anytime soon. So that's for my purpose here today. Again, I'm really in awe to be with such two accomplished panelists that have been in the fight much longer than me. And Diane, I want to thank you for inviting me too, and I want to remind people to support local papers, because I will tell you that they do the best reporting, they do intrepid reporting, and they do the stuff that the big guys will just gloss over.
Thank you for that. There's some very key people here that I want to give an opportunity to speak. And Janine, do you want to say a few words just to make them aware of your current situation and come up and get a microphone? Use my microphone, or is another? Oh, right there, there's a stationary mic. I guess I need to put my glasses on.
Hello. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Janine Cordero. I'm a youth organizer with a grassroots org called Anubaya in San Fernando Valley, representing Filipino youth and students. And I've also been organizing for the past year and a half for the Justice for the Rocas campaign. So like Diana white working class family who were viciously attacked in a North Hollywood McDonald's drive-thru. I think some of you may be familiar with that incident. And for the past year and a half, since May of last year, the Roques have been going to the courthouse every month or multiple times a month alongside the community. And recently, actually, the case just closed as of yesterday, where the family had to accept a plea deal. Because like Diana said, the hate crime enhancements were dropped. So let me give more context about that. The night of the attack on May 13, 2022, the Roques, mother and daughter Narissa and Patricia, the Filipinos, were harassed in a McDonald's drive-thru by the attacker, Nicholas Weber. They were rear-ended in the drive-thru, and he pulled out of the drive-thru and pulled to their side and started hurling racial slurs, a mocking Asian accent. And this was all documented on video by Patricia Roque. And in that video, you hear Nicholas Weber say, "You're so Asian, I'll kill you." And then shortly after that, minutes later, he actually made that attempt to kill them. The Roques did call for help from police. They took over an hour to arrive. They called their father, Gabriel Roque, who the family lives 5 minutes away from McDonald's, and he had arrived. But Weber had already started harassing and attacking the Roques who were told by police to park their car and remain at the site to wait for them to come. But Weber continued to try to open the car doors of Patricia Roque. When Gabriel Roque had arrived and saw that Weber had been trying to attack his wife and daughter, he tried to stop him. And instead, Weber responded by pushing Gabriel Roque so hard on the ground on the curb stopper in the parking lot, breaking his rib. Weber also proceeded to choke and strangle Narissa Roque, the mother, when she tried to stop him. So all of this was caught on video. But the night when the police had arrived and brought up their case, they reported the incident as a traffic collision because of the rear-ending in the drive-thru. And then over the weekend, police contacted the Roques again, and Roques wanted to report this as a hate incident. The police told them not to report because it's too much time and money and it's exhausting. So the police themselves deterred the family from reporting. But among the first people to respond to this hate attack was not the police, but actually community members, such as myself. I was there the night of the attack, unfortunately after the attack had happened. Other members of the clan were there because we were accompanying our good friend, Patrick Roque, the eldest son of the family who was with us that night. And so I saw the devastation of the family and the trauma that had just transpired. But that night, the mother, Narissa Roque, asserted that she didn't want this to happen to any other family again. And so that was the beginnings of the Justice for the Roques campaign, where actually, because of the deterrence of law enforcement to even report, it was community members like us who encouraged them to still pursue justice. We got them connected to local community organizations like the Filipino Migrant Center to help them find pro bono assistance, legal assistance. So a lawyer actually took up their case for free to represent them, Attorney Sandy Rojas. We also connected them to mental health services because the family needed to process the trauma they had just experienced. We immediately fundraised to help meet their medical bills and expenses. And that had been going on for the past year and a half, even as of yesterday. We continue to do this work for the Roques. We even contacted media to help raise awareness about the incident. And of course, I think many of you did see that on TV, in San Fernando Sun, and other local newspapers. We raised awareness, we did education in the community, regular outreach, and we would, like Diana said, we would rally at 7 a.m. We would host press conferences at each and every court hearing. But during the preliminary hearings in April, what should have been a 2-hour preliminary hearing turned into over 40 hours. We had to consecutively go to the courthouse every day and see the defense and the defense representing Nicholas Weber belittle the family, accuse them of being opportunistic because of the wide media attention, because of the financial assistance they were getting from the community, and making the family doubt their experiences. And I also specifically remember in those series of court hearings that the family was being misrepresented by the court. And so the result was the judge ruled that this was not a hate crime. Because the biggest basis was that, oh, Nicholas Weber, the attacker, wasn't calling them Asian or showing bias during the attack, the assault itself. There was a 15-minute time gap between the Asian slur, the anti-Asian slurs, the mocking Asian accent. 15 minutes after that, when he attempted to kill them, it was not related to racial hate. And so that was the reasoning by law. And so I think I appreciate you, Diana, for giving us a platform because I wanted to share the reality of actually reporting racial hate. Yes, I'm representing the AAPI community, but this problem also persists in many other communities, such as the Latino community, the Black community, other oppressed and marginalized communities based on religion or sexuality or gender. Because the fight for the Rocas, we did everything right. We had video evidence that was nitpicked to the bone. We had witnesses and testimonies and also public and community pressure. We did, hundreds of people would go to these rallies every morning, and yet it wasn't enough. The Rocas, once the hate crime enhancements were dropped, the Rocas felt like going to trial would just be more exhausting and more of a toll on their families, who consistently had to take time off work, which they could not afford. They're a working class family, and have to misrepresent themselves in court. Because having the hate crime enhancements drop is not a true representation of their experience. And so they accepted the plea deal. And so, as of yesterday, Nicholas Weber was sentenced. 40 hours of individual anti-bias therapy, 40 hours of anti-bias group therapy, and then an 18-month alcohol program. And because he had been in custody this whole time, and mind you, he was only in custody because the community put pressure on the police to arrest him. They wouldn't arrest him in the first place, ever since the attack. Because he's been serving time, Nicholas Weber is actually being let go on probation. And that is as of yesterday. So I just want to bring this case to the attention of all of you in the community and our wonderful panelists, because this is the reality. And, yes, it's collecting data and knowing that there's a problem is very important, but then, and I understand that collecting data will help allocate services and outreach and education to solve the problem. But then there's the family like the Rocas who didn't get that immediate assistance. Bureau of Victim Services was supposed to assist them, but instead they lost their paperwork. They wouldn't return their calls. We had to constantly contact the DA's office, who wasn't as responsive to the family. And even when the family had to go to the preliminary hearings to testify, they were supposed to receive like $18 for a day of testifying. And they still haven't received that. And so, who had been sustaining the family the whole time was us community members selling t-shirts, hosting fundraisers, asking for donations on behalf of the family, an initiative on our end, not theirs, just so they can survive, just so they can still continue the fight against not only Asian hate, but racial violence as a whole. And now we're at a point where, now that the court case is done, what do we do? And for us, our resolve is unwavering, and we will continue organizing our communities for genuine change, and we're going to continue organizing for actual change of policy, change of the impossible standard by the law to meet the standard of a hate crime or hate incident. So that is the experience of the Roque family, and for those of you who are curious or want to learn more or want to support, they are on Facebook and Instagram. We have an account called Justice for the Roques, ROQUES, and Janine from Anabaya, and I'm willing to talk to any of you who want to support. But thank you for listening, and thank you, Diana, for inviting me.
Thank you, Janine. I think that she represents these cracks in the system and these holes when the natural thing to do as a street vendor would normally do. Now they go to call Eden for the police, but for the most part, to how discouraging that is when you have been beat up and the police are responding and telling you, oh, it's not a big deal, we don't want to go through this process of calling. This is a traffic collision. And again, I regret that, in our multitasking ourselves, we don't have that video, but it is online for you to look at. If this is not a hate crime, what is? So there has to be something else in place so that these clear hate crimes aren't falling through the cracks. It seems to me that police are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and it seems to me, and I'm having a commentary here, writing it in my head, and it clearly seems to me that the bias continues up and down, including by a judge, who has ultimate power to say, well, I don't really think this is, and so just kind of make up, won't even read what's on your website to clearly say what the difference is between a hate incident and a hate crime. He wasn't calling you these things or tightening his eyes and the other baloney he did to this family while he was beating you up. He wasn't insulting you. He wasn't calling you names. I mean, we have covered stories over the years, long before, this whole deeming, that our wonderful, I hate to call him President Trump, use Asian flu and all the other horrible things that he did to our country, so that we began to talk more about this. But on our cover, Martha Rivers as well, there was a woman who was deemed Asian. She was indigenous. If you track, and that's controversy too, the migration. I always like to tell my Asian friends it went the other way to Mexico and Central America, and they say it went the reverse way. Because, genetics, etc., most of our babies are born with that same yellow mark up the back, right? We resemble each other. Indigenous people resemble what people view as Asian. And this woman who was in our community the photos were almost not fit to print. Her face was absolutely homeless and disfigured. And she was a Latina. She was indigenous. And they beat her up. Horrible. Thinking she was quote unquote Asian. So the point that you're making, sometimes, it's close enough for someone to make an excuse to assault someone.
Exactly.
Or, they think you're gay, or they think, there's hate, and, if people don't think that they have a gay member of their family, they need to really take a look at their family. I mean, it crosses all lines, all races, all genders, and, we're now having to learn pronouns from our young, families, right?
Right.
So, we're changing, but the system is not changing. It is continuing to be rigid and arbitrary. So these connections have to be made as everybody goes to their corners of work, right? And that's the purpose of having these discussions. We really want them to be discussions. When people need to do public hearings, they're checking off the boxes. Say, oh, we had it, and now we're going to go do what we want to do. Even town halls are so formal. knowing who these people are in the room and vice versa, and having access to each other needs to happen. So you understand what happened to the Rocket family, and you can ask them who that judge was. And somebody needs to have a conversation with that judge. And someone needs to find out who the officer was that responded to the call. And they need to know that they're going to be accountable for that. Because media, there's truth to it, if it leads, it leads. Especially TV media, they're going to go initially, let's see, we don't have too much today, so we'll cover the Roque rally today, but they won't continue on with.
Well, one thing I'd like to say that was reflected here on this panel too is that everybody needs to understand that hate is an equal opportunity employer. It will go across color lines, and we're seeing the community hate on itself. Whether somebody is Latino, or we're seeing people from the community hate on one another. And I think that this is a bigger social phenomena that we need to be aware of. That's why with our LA County program, we have such a big wheelhouse to address it on AAPI, Black, Latino, LGBTQ, because it's all interrelated. And we all need to stand together and remember that we're all our own best allies, because this is a poison that's starting to metastasize. In some of the video that we saw earlier, I was appalled by this, but I wasn't really shocked by it. Hate is always on the move. So I know that we all I can't hope for a utopia, right? But the way I look at it is that I will advocate for most anybody because it's all advocating for the same purpose, is that we all need to stand up for one another. And the bigger we can make our coalition, the more change that we can make.
Luz or Eden, do you have any recommendations for these supporters who have hung in there for the year and a half and raised money and did everything they could? Do you have any recommendations for what they might do next?
Well, I would call your representatives. I'm not sure where the family lives, to try to engage them. A lot of times when people call me, we contact, either the DA's office or something. I'd like to engage more of us. That's what some people do. It's unfortunate that this has happened, and I want to work with you to see what we can do about that. So we
now, would it be where they live or where the incident occurred?
I would say both, right? Because a lot of times what we do is the members, we organize with each other, right? And we either send a letter, and I get asked to sign on to letters of incidents that happen in other areas of LA, right? Just in solidarity and in support, because the more there are of us, right, the more then they have to respond. Right?
Would you say that this case still has legs to approach the LAPD and follow up with that officer or even the judicial system to write a complaint about that judge? Would that still have legs even though the family accepted the plea agreement to close the case?
I don't know enough about whether that is still the case, but no, you want to speak?
Okay, yeah, just.
Oh, is the mic?
I'll wait.
Yeah, go ahead, but go ahead.
No, I want you to respond to the same question. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, definitely finding out the judge, definitely finding out the officers, going to the city council meetings. I'm pretty sure you already have been doing that. Same thing as what she said, contacting the senator, contacting the Congress members, contacting the local board of supervisor. I think what the work, back in 2018, my mentor Antonio Gonzalez told me, Eden, what you're doing as an activist is great, but you need to step into the policy, making changes of the policy, right? Look, after a fire, there's ashes left over, right? Those ashes are the policies that are changing. But if there is no fire from the community, those policies and these laws are never going to change. That fire, we need to build up that fire as a community, because those policies that we're changing are just the leftover. And policies represent the community, and the community needs to step up as well. But which is why I went back to my roots and to call out these individuals, because in the 90s, the KKK, after they were being exposed, the leaders, they said that they were going to infiltrate the judicial system. They were gonna infiltrate the police system. And that is what I did. In 2009, when I was beaten by the LAPD, I didn't know what to do. And I didn't do anything. I didn't even make a report. I didn't even sue. But in 2010, when I was beat up by my local police department, what we did, not only did I sue, but we started going to the city council meetings, and because so many lawsuits came in collectively, the whole police department was disbanded. This police department was overseeing 95,000 people. They were terrorizing our community. Now, we're not great now with the sheriffs, but wow, it was just a major change. So that is what we did, and that is what inspired me to do what I'm doing now. And that was 13 years ago. And I feel like I'm still going back to my roots, like I said, with the policy change and everything, that's super important, but also going back to the roots where you're in the front lines, you're calling out people individually, especially what we did to Nick Pillman, that police officer right here in Upland, teaching his daughter to be racist, and then it goes back to him shooting an unarmed Mexican 10 times, and went back to what continues doing. So we need to call out these individuals, call out that judge, call out that officer, because if we don't do that, they're going to continue doing that, and there will be more victims. Another thing I just want to touch base on that I've been learning as well, I've been teaching our folks to stop using that word Latino, to stop using the word Hispanic, because we are not. If our ancestors were to listen to us now, that we consider ourselves Latino, which is because we're not from Latin, we're not from Spain, because the majority of us are indigenous. We're Maya, we're Aztec, we're Maya, we're Mexica, and that's something that we need to reevaluate our language that we use.
Well, yeah, my name is Steve Martinez, longtime 30-year activist. Actually started the gang juice. I know your story very well. A lot of kids were able to get resources from the harassment gang injunctions through LA, through some of the things you did. But my thing, what I think nobody's pointing out, is that we got to change some of these judges. They're inside prejudice. Actually, I'm actually already working on removing one from San Fernando Court. He goes to election next year, and he's a Republican conservative. I've never heard of people waiting 2 years to go to trial when they ask for a speedy trial, which is 90 days. We all know this, 2 years. So it's time, as far as I'm concerned, it's time for that judge to go. I won't mention it because when it comes out next year election, we'll find out. There's 2 ways judges get in these courts. Elections, either elected or appointed. That's it. You know, just let our Senate member know. Senators can always talk to the governor. Who appoints them is the governor. They get appointed either for lifetime or for 6 years, 12 years, whatever. We have the power. I see here, I'm sorry, street vendors, gente that have been abused, racist, LGBTQ. These judges are very sticky to the old school. 19, they had their way where they could assault us. We've been educated. We've been educated. But I say here, the bottom line is change of judgeships. And there's only 2 ways to the I'm not talking about federal courts. I'm talking about state of California. There are only 2 ways to get in office. You re-elect them, and many times we ignore who we're voting for on a judge roster. Maybe we should do our homework when we do our voting. I've registered over 11,000 people in this valley. Ruben has registered, we come out about 65,000. We got the votes, guys. We just got to vote. And we got to know who we're voting for. We just go down the line, Latino name, African American name. And
she sounds nice.
We need, yes, thank you. All these things nice. Martha. Oh, yeah, no, sorry. You know what I mean, right? What I'm saying is, yes, we need to do our history, but some of us need to unite and put money in the butt to educate the voters too. This is a bad judge, man. I mean, when I hear that story of the Filipino incident, man, unacceptable. Unacceptable. Back in the 60s, cars would have been, I mean, we know, we've been through that already. But we're doing it the right way. Our kids are getting educated, so I'm a little older. You know, young folks are getting educated, we're sending them to school. I did have medications to all my 3 boys to go to college. My daughter can get her certification and bring a beauty salon, and she runs her own shop. That's what we're about. I don't have the tattoos, brother, but I understand where you're coming from. You know what I mean? And I gotta say, just to make it short, is the judges. And just the bottom line is, we can't force LAPD if they don't train their officers to write the report right. That's training and how to write the incident report. If you look at the incident report, sometimes the elementary, I can write it better. And I'm only a high school graduate. We gotta look at not only at the way they write this stuff up, but mostly as judges. We gotta change these judges, that's all. Voting or make sure the governor, get rid of it.
Thank you. No, I just want to respond to that. I think he's completely right, especially when it comes to voting for judges. A lot of people do not do the research. And you're like, oh, she sounds nice, and like, oh, he looks good. Some people in my family tell me that all the time, right? They're like, I'm voting for her because she's Latina, or the name. She sounds like someone I went to high school with, or something. I'm like, oh, she's very conservative, I know a lot about them sometimes, right? And we don't do that, and a lot of times also this area, I'm not proud of this, we have one of the lowest voter turnout in every election, right? It's 8%, 10% of the registered voters that come out. The highest I've ever seen it is in 2020 when Trump was running. It was a very high turnout for the Northeast Valley. But a lot of times you just can't get people to vote, and I think it has to be, even if, Allah says, well, why should I? Who cares? They're all the same. They're not. We're not. Not everyone on the ballot. And your voice is not being heard because you don't vote. So,
say, oh, does that look like a Spanish surname? Or we don't vote for anybody. So, which is just, well, I don't know if it's worse or better. I mean, either one is good, right? Because you're not weighing in. But I think also for those, the judges or the, assessor's office, there isn't a good job by media and other ways to outreach to inform people about people don't give money to, for those campaigns for them to promote or hold for whatever process. So people have no way of knowing. Right. So
it's expensive to get the word out, right? And a lot of people don't invest in that.
But one thing to say is that Trump did make sure that he got judges all over the country that are going to affect the rest of our lives. So it's important that we do focus on judges. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Some of them are lifetime appointments, right? So, and the governor appoints, like he said, that in LA County you can get elected. And some of the candidates that I've met that ran, it's because they couldn't get appointed by the governor, because it's like the way to get there, and they would be a great judge. So they're like, you know what, we're just gonna run. And there was some successful candidates that just ran.
One of the things you're very right, people are very in the dark when it comes to judges and people on the local level. When there were midterms or the 2020 election, I found that most people in my community deferred to the LA Times or something sent from their Democratic Party, just because, let's face it, these ballots were overwhelming. It took me a couple hours to fill out mine. So maybe, like for this district, Diana, maybe you could put out something that really vets these judges, because that's really the go-to. And I've been guilty of it myself. I'm just thinking, okay, well, what did my party affiliation say, or what does the LA Times say? And I just start filling it out. But yeah, we all probably need to step it up, and maybe some local media could also step it up as well to help people make a better decision.
And also, I'm not sure if the judge with the Roque situation, if he was appointed or he was elected, obviously if he were to run, hypothetically speaking, then we know who, right? We know.
Yeah, I want to offer this insight about the judge throughout the hate crime case. She's a woman, South Asian woman appointed by Governor Jerry Brown, registered Democrat. Wow. So I want to put that out there.
So that's really important. For example, next time you're voting for your governor. And I know we live in an economy where we're just busy working. A lot of us are just surviving. It's hard, right? So there are voter guides. For example, I go based out of Knock LA, for example, because those they align more with my values. So Knock LA, at every election cycle, Knock Out LA, they pull out their voter guides, because I trust it because they stand with my values. And same thing with next time you vote for a governor, and what we're talking about. A lot of folks think, oh, well, it was Joe Biden and Donald Trump. A lot of my friends are like, they're both evil. Who cares? I'm not voting for them, right? And that's at a certain extent, it's true. But at the end of the day, when you look at what Trump and the judges that he appointed for life, compared to what probably Joe would have, even though they're both trash. But at the end of the day, you have to. It sucks, but you have to choose the lesser of both evils, right? But those federal judges are going to be here probably for a long time.
Yeah. All right, got a question?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Mario. Primero que nada quiero agradecerle a San Fernando Valley Sun Newspaper por dejarnos expresarnos a todos. No vengo a decir nada específico, solo quiero prácticamente agradecerle a Alex por todo lo que hace por la comunidad, por todo lo que hace por las personas en la calle, por todos los vendedores, porque todos somos parte de esa comunidad. Somos personas que no nos gustan las injusticias, personas que siempre...
I just ordinarily wanted to thank everybody because we're all part of the community, and thank you for everything that you're doing, and then we'll go some
y más que todo quiero agradecerle a Alex por todo lo que hace por las personas en la calle.
First, I wanted to thank Alex for everything he's doing for the people in the street.
Creo que todos necesitamos lo que él hace. No todos tenemos el valor que él tiene. No todos podemos hacer lo que él hace.
Not all of us can do what he's doing, and nor do we have that sort of impact and influence.
Y personalmente quiero agradecerle porque su trabajo es muy duro, es muy estresante. Nadie se da cuenta de eso.
And nobody understands how difficult and stressful your work is, so I'd like to acknowledge that.
Pero los que estamos con él, los que apoyamos esta causa, porque somos muchos, no solo por ser Alex, sino apoyamos todo lo que es injusticia. No estamos de acuerdo con eso.
We do not agree with anything that is unjust, and we are supporting Alex.
Quiero decir en nombre de las personas que no pudieron venir, ya sea por trabajo, ya sea por tiempo o por lejos, que estamos muy agradecidos con Alex por su trabajo y estamos aquí para apoyarlo.
I'd like to say on behalf of everyone that was working that couldn't be here, that we're here to support Alex and what he's doing.
Y gracias a cada uno de ustedes, también a los que están sentados. No soy nadie, pero aquí estamos en mi presencia y Alex, muchas gracias.
Thank you. Gracias por hablar mucho. Earlier I did mention that, it takes a wolf to protect a wolf, but they are not sheep, they are wolves. To stand out there in Compton and watch at 12 a.m. trying to make a living for your kids, that is being a wolf. And sometimes I know that they probably would do more than defend themselves, but because of their status, it holds them back. But I just want to give it up. Le quiero agradecer a ti, a todos los vendedores. Ustedes son los lobos, ustedes son héroes para mí.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Aleman, and I wear different hats, and I also want to thank the San Fernando Sun for these wonderful conversations. This is my third one I attend. Thank you for the comment, Antonio, about the judges. I also spend a lot of time looking at the judges and doing research and thinking about what their colleagues think about them also, not just what the newspapers or each party says. So Diane, I was going to say, maybe like a committee of people who can sit down with you and vet so that it doesn't all fall on you to kind of figure out the judges. Just wanted to add that recommendation. And as a policy wonk, I want to ask policy questions because Assemblymember Rivas, at the beginning you said you came here because the governor set aside funding to fight API hate crime. And you wanted to hear from our community to see how the Latino caucus could go ahead and advocate for that, right? And I want to be able to contribute to that. This is not my area, but this is certainly my community. And I do live in the Valley. So my question to you is, how would that money potentially, how is it being envisioned being utilized to stop hate crimes in the API community, so that we can then think about how we could also kind of challenge that or champion that, I guess we can say, and give you recommendations that make sense for our community, and they may be similar. And then my other question is for Eden. And Eden, it sounds like in Montebello, it's more, you said it was like, or in the community, it's more like an aesthetic issue with the businesses, not wanting street vendors, and not so much an economic issue. And my question for you would be, is there an opportunity to have a conversation with the elected officials, many of whom are your friends, you stated, or in the past have been, to kind of find a middle ground, right? To bring these issues to them and say, okay, maybe you don't want them in front of your business, because to Diana's point, I mean, they do have a business, and for whatever reasons they don't want that there, but can the elected officials come with you and the vendors and the businesses to like a solution that makes sense for everyone, because they are part of the economy, and they do make millions generate millions of dollars, not just for themselves, but all of the retailers that they buy, products from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Evelyn. Thank you for your questions. And from what I know, and my API colleagues in the legislature, they got together when this was happening, especially a few years ago, not just in the Bay Area, but in Los Angeles too. There was a rise in API hate crimes, especially elderly API individuals. And they came up with a proposal and met with the governor, right? And when we do this early on in the year, because our budget, that's when we're negotiating the state budget. And then the budget gets signed in June. So like in the fall and then early in the year is when we're all thinking of like, what should the state fund? What's a need that needs to get funded? And so they came up with a proposal, and what I believe is happening is they're funding like local organizations that work with the API community, and they're having different programs. But I need to learn more, and I can get you that information on how it's working. I will talk to the colleagues that championed that budget request. I know in our caucus, we've been working with the governor's office on, providing the services for the migrants that are unfortunately being sent or used by these governors from Texas and Florida. LA has received hundreds of migrants coming over, from Texas. They're being sent from Texas. And there's a CHIRLA that was supposed to be here. They're one of the lead organizations. The state has provided them this year $1.3 million to increase the number of caseworkers, to work on helping the migrants that are here. And not all of them stay in California. Some of them, they connect them with relatives in other states, or they know people from their same country or town, depending what country they're from, and they're being connected, to those communities. So there is funding that's happening there, but I will get you more information, and we can talk about that.
Minerva, before you speak, I gave you a job to do, and you didn't do it, which is to mention the rent issue, and the person who has been presenting to the parents group. She wears many, many hats. She also is a media person, but she started a parents group and also River Walkers, and talk for a moment about the parents group and the concern that there has been over the change since the pandemic with evictions.
Sure. So as Diana mentioned, I've known her for many, many years as a PR specialist myself, and I started two groups. One was to clean the LA River Walkers and Watchers, the Upper River, and we've worked with all entities to create a unique model to clean up the area, and we've done a great job, 8 years doing that. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I launched the Our Voice, Communities for Quality Education, and it is a group of Latino immigrant, indigenous immigrant parents and students primarily focused on finding and securing quality education in our public schools, charter or unified, traditional, doesn't matter. And in doing this, we meet every Friday on Zoom, and we bring different speakers, including the Coalition for Economic Survival, because we're finding out that our families are discriminated in so many different ways, and the director, Carlos Aguilar, has really opened our eyes about, the conditions that our families are living in, and the pressures that they're receiving from landlords, and the concerns about the lifting of the rent moratorium. And so it's been really eye-opening. We've had him over 3 times to talk about how the laws in place for developers and owners, landowners, property owners are being used, they use them to make families believe that they can be removed from the properties illegally, when it's illegal. And so our point in doing this is to raise awareness in our families, inform them, empower them, so that when the landowner says, or whoever's renting them says, you have to leave, and this is the law that I'm using, that they know what the law is, and they can turn around and contact their elected officials and say, this is what they're doing to me. And so I'll leave my card with all 3 of you if you like. Our Voice Communities for Quality Education. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you.
And your group is primarily monolingual Spanish. And so she has done a wonderful job in bridging that community, which is very vulnerable. And the motivation behind it is because they wanted to be active in their home schools, but were hitting walls. So they have now learned how to, advocate for themselves and know that they have access. She has direct access to the supervisor, Favela, now. So again, I think the lesson brought here is that we all have the ability to not wait to be anointed, but just begin to do the work. And I think Eden is a great example of that. Evelyn is a great example of that. Minerva is a great example. And I can go, Janine, these people, you're giving the suggestions, and they're all wonderful suggestions. You've been on this journey with them. They turned every stone over. They, put their hands in their pocket when, calls didn't come back. They were the most committed, impressive, organized community that I have seen in a very long time. And it was very discouraging to see that they were hitting walls. So people like the 3 sitting there that represent the Filipino community, and supporting them in the Valley and throughout LA County, and Evelyn and Minerva, and all of you are doing exactly that.
Just wanted to answer her question regarding the middle ground that you mentioned. We have reached that middle ground with several cities. Like, for example, in the city I grew up in, Cudahy, I've sat down with the city manager, and we understand that the retail food code is updating thanks to Senate Bill 972. So he understands that it's in a gray area. And a recent New York study helped us out as well, that the majority of food poisoning cases comes from home and also restaurants. Per capita compared to street vendors, it was by far way less. So in Cudahy, we have kind of like an ethical agreement with the restaurants. For example, no one sets up in front of restaurants in Cudahy. We have kind of a lonely street in the industrial side, and we have several vendors there. It's called Patata Street. So we have several vendors there, and if there is a restaurant, once they close, for example, if they close at 9 p.m., if there is a taco stand that would like to set up, they set up after. And that's basically the ethical agreement that we have in Cudahy, and it's worked out for the past couple of years. No problems whatsoever. And like I mentioned, the city manager understands that the retail food code is updating. It's in the gray area, and they've allowed them to sell. Attending the city council meetings that we've had has helped us a lot as well. As far as the red zoning, Senate Bill 972 doesn't allow red zoning. So, for example, if you want a jurisdiction to say, I don't want you to sell at a certain street, Senate Bill 972 protects that. But like I said, the ethical agreement that we've had with vendors has helped out. And so I wish that other cities can do that. But yeah.
Okay, I have a lot to say. I'm Minerva. I'm going to start with the judge issue. There is an organization called La Defensa La Defensa vets judges because that is what they're set up to do. So I suggest everybody look up La Defensa, and they will rank each judge, and they will put their record online. And so La Defensa is a very, very good place to start. Also, I have had my issues with judges. I'm part of holding the police accountable. I'm part of that community. And we were recently in the courtroom, and I witnessed this. It was to hold the ALADs, the union for the sheriffs, to demand that their gang members show their tattoos to prove that they're not gang members. And the judge sided with them because he said, oh, being in a gang isn't criminal. That's what he said, that being in a deputy gang isn't criminal. And I heard it, and I turned to my friends and I go, did I just hear what I just heard? And they go, yeah. I heard Gaston say it too, because there is no law that prevents deputies from forming gangs. So yes, you should be suspect of judges. So La Defensa is one way, knock LA, we gotta start there. My second issue, voy a hablar en español para los vendedores. Si se unen, una sugerencia que se unan como la unión de inquilinos que se unieron y están peleando contra sus landlords. Tal vez es una sugerencia que se unan todos, se haga un sindicato de vendedores. Pueden ir también, sugerencia de nuevo, con the National Labor Board, tal vez, para que tengan derechos. Porque sí, ellos pagan demasiados impuestos, más que Netflix, y es la realidad. So I'm going to say it in English. I'm suggesting possibly coming together, forming a union, like the tenants union, where they're able to fight their landlords, and possibly they could come together too. It's just a suggestion, I was thinking about it. And then this is for Ms. Rivas, possibly, doing some kind of state law where, we form little markets for people, like empty parking lots where they come together once a month. The street vendors can come together, the community can come and learn about their street vendors and help each other out. Why not? So that there isn't so much hatred. People know who each other is. And maybe fighting it in that way with community, like Anthony Bourdain, when he would share bread with folks that he didn't know in different countries. It's just a suggestion, just came to me. And then lastly, Mr. Kaiser, Antonio. There was a recent case that happened in Los Angeles. A security guard was stomped to death by 10 people. And it's possibly a hate crime. I think the security guard was black. So what do we do about that? What is the procedure if somebody said, they come forward, I was a witness to this. What happens if they come to you, not to the police, they come to you? What would be the process of somebody asking you those questions?
If they come to me, then what I'm going to have them do is I'm going to probably have them either call 211 or to go online and fill out the proper form in order to submit a case. What I can do, and I'll share this with all of you, is that if you submit the case online and you take a screen grab of the case, you're going to be given a control number. You can contact me and I can help expedite that. So it's not something that I often talk about, but it's something that's within my purview. So that's what I would tell people if you feel that enough progress is not getting made. But the important thing is that you have to log the complaint so that it can be tracked and so that I can expedite it and follow up on it. So that's what I would say.
Minerva, I'm going to have another question for you, but let's give her an opportunity.
Just wanted to answer what you mentioned about the idea about, so we just started a union of vendors to start it off this year. We kind of didn't want to start a nonprofit, but the reason why we started it was because we noticed that the nonprofits that do help street vendors in the state Some have been receiving millions but don't do anything with it. Also, each city does have the right to have community events. So for example, if you want to organize a community event, you can go on the website for LA County Public Health, and you can request for a temporary permit. They allow community 3 days a week to hold a community event, and under that community event umbrella, taquerias can legally sell. So that's something we're going to start off too, but I recommend everyone here, because we can't be in every single city, but if you want to organize a community event in your city, you can. 3 days a week, you have that limit, so just wanted to touch that base.
Can we hear your question?
So my question is, and I apologize for my ignorance, but I was wondering about food trucks. Is that something that's also in competition with the street vendor? Because in my area, I've noticed that restaurants are now deploying food trucks on certain days. They have apps and they're kind of going out in my community on certain days, and more restaurants are trying to, they're salivating to try to get into that market. So could you speak to that?
Yeah, and last year in Long Beach, my girl remembers this, there were several restaurants on Shoreline Drive that were against the food trucks on Shoreline Drive, and one day they put up signs where you can have extra large vehicles, practically kicking out all the vendors. So we found out who it was. There was a restaurant owner, I forgot the name of the restaurant, but he was organizing everyone. We protested, and literally, I think 4 hours later, Lena made the call. She's like, what the heck is going on? Public Works put these signs, and they put the signs down 4 hours later. So it has happened. I've been learning a lot from my friend Matt and Richard. They're part of he's the president of the National Food Trucks Association. Everything that I'm doing right now, they did it 20 years ago when several cities didn't want lunch trucks to be able to cook inside. So they had an end goal. You don't really hear a lot of fights against, legal fights against food trucks now, and that's our goal in the future, to be able to have street vendors where we don't just want to displace them and put them in the market. Because there's always going to be a vendor on the corner of Atlantic and Firestone, right? So we want to be able to normalize that and be able to have them not fear, So, a lot of food trucks, they don't have to fear that. But yes, there is a lot of fights between restaurants and food trucks, and sometimes also food trucks and street vendors, but we try to mediate that without even posting it on social media. We try to keep those internal disagreements offline and be able to have a solution and be able to continue going on.
Hi, I've been a long-time resident from San Fernando since childhood. Grew up, public schools, you name it, we were here. Anyhow, I want to thank Eddie, Wendy for the work that you guys do with the community. I know you guys are all over the place, even going to Nevada and up north and just everywhere, so thank you for that. And thank you for being the voice for people that are underserved. Now my question is, or my concerns I should say first. I have a few concerns. We are underserved. The San Fernando Valley is underserved. I can't tell you how many people that I've spoken with that don't know about resources that we provide. I kind of expected this room to be much bigger than what it is. And thank you all for coming out and supporting and showing that you guys care about, where we live. Mental health, I haven't heard really much about mental health. There's money in it, and I'm not talking about community mental health, LA County Department of Mental Health. I feel like they service a lot of the underserved people as much as they could. But I'm talking about Kaiser, I'm talking about Facey's, I'm talking about those entities that are not providing culturally based services. Yes, California wanted everybody to get insurance. Okay, well, what are we doing with that? How are we helping? And Eddie, did I hear you say that little girl who watched her father die, they're cutting services for her? What are we doing here? We need to do more. We need to help more. We're talking about hate. People have been beat up, assaulted, verbally attacked. That's just as bad. How are we helping them afterwards? It's like we're re-victimizing these victims, and we need to continue to help them, whether they have insurance, no insurance, whether they're black, white, Mexican, whatever they are. We need to help them. And I think that we as a community, we need to pay more attention to you know, how these hospitals, how the healthcare, where is that money going to? Now, I know firsthand, and this is off record, the groups that we had in our healthcare system, and I don't want to name names, but they got rid of the LGBT group at some of these places. We're living in the Sylmar, San Fernando, Pacoima area where we need Spanish groups. We need to be able to provide intensive outpatient services to people that don't speak English, and we do not have them right now.
Okay, anyone want to respond?
Mention a couple of things. That's the end result. We are the only major country that doesn't offer universal health care, and that's sad. And that's why I continue fighting that through my job, to continue fighting for universal health care. It sucks that when you make a certain amount of money in this state, you don't qualify for, example, 211. 211 is great. You know, if you're on Medi-Cal, I recommend you to call 211. I did that in 2015, and I did receive therapy when I did call 211. Ironically, my brother who passed away and ended his battle with depression was the one who told me about 211. And it wasn't until he passed away that I decided to take his advice. But that's another fight. That's another fight that's been on our front line as well. But I'm not sure what you would like to say.
This is probably a little bit out of my purview. I know that 211 handles more than just hate crimes. They handle a multitude of different things, but I do think that the healthcare issue is a big issue, just not in California, but also nationwide. I know that there's Covered California. I'm not sure what it does cover, what it doesn't. I know that during the pandemic there was insurance for most people, but unfortunately I think that some of those things have expired. So I think that this is something that we all just need to put on our radar and collectively challenge or champion for until change is made.
I'm glad you brought up mental health, especially in our communities. I've been working and meeting with local providers, and a lot of what I found was like, you know, they're a small organization and, you know, their appointments are booked. They do offer the services, but there's just such more need than they have the capacity for. And there's an organization here in San Fernando called El Centro de la Amistad. And we just got them $2 million in the state budget so that they're able to expand their building, right? So they have more space to offer more appointments. And, you know, we're with them next Friday, you know, to present that allocation from the state. I just met with communities and schools. Also, they started offering much more mental health services, especially for men. In our community, which they told me that a lot of times, you know, they don't want to admit that they need help or they don't want to go to mental health services, but they started doing a lot of outreach. This is in Pacoima, near the county airport. They have a space over there by the Whiteman Airport. And they don't have the space anymore because they are getting people to come and book these appointments. And so from what I'm hearing from the providers is like, we need more space, more buildings, and you know, that's a huge investment. It's millions of dollars, right, to buy a space and to expand. And so like I started with El Centro de la Amistad and hope to continue with other organizations, right, that we can help, that's something the state can help with. Provide a one-time funding allocation of a few $1 million so that they're able to expand their spaces, right? Because of the huge need in this community.
I'd like to see, if you don't mind passing the mic this way so we don't have to grab it. Pass it this way. He's got his mic. Okay.
Hello.
Wait, hold on one second.
I want to just respond to that. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Because we are on the ground, we hear about all these organizations and hear about all this need. And I'm very grateful for Centro. I also know, though, that because of the demand, the patients that they have are sometimes not even seen one-on-one. The doctors will conference with them once a month. And when a patient is depressed, as Eden knows, nothing is worse. It's hard going minute to minute. I know that personally, because one day all of my stress-ridden major newsrooms caught up with me, and something just switched. I was sent to a Mexico City earthquake, and I had no ground under my feet. Of course, I came back with PTSD, right? And every place I sought help for, it was not help. So it is a matter of life and death, and the need is not being met. And it's wonderful because we go to those ribbon cuttings and, oh, we're going to grow this. But what really needs to happen are checks and balances on the doctors who are Medi-Cal doctors, and not just Medi-Cal doctors, private doctors that can charge $300 and $600 an hour. Guess what? They're tied into pharmaceutical companies that give sample drugs that are delivered to people's doors, making it so convenient. They don't even have to drive through a CVS. And guess what? That's part of their research. Their patients become their research, and their patients suffer as they're going through all of these symptoms and horror. So just to say that services are provided is much more complicated. As Minerva, following her story when Vanessa Marquez got killed, she was facing 4 autoimmune diseases. And in the end, she was turned away at hospitals every time she needed help. And so when they tried it in the end, 5150, she didn't want to do that. They broke into her home. Police broke into her home, scared the living hell out of her. They wanted to put her in an ambulance. She was already behind the 8 ball with medical debt, and she knew another ambulance debt ride was going to cost her another $1,000. This is the reality of how people lose their lives every day. So from a legislative perspective, yes, absolutely, you're doing the right thing to expanding. Sheila Huel, I'm not afraid to say, was not well attached to this community, but the one thing she did was put a family services thing there and put her name very prominently on it. And there was some controversy over that placement as well, because another community, quite frankly, didn't want it there. But are they doing good work? I certainly hope so. But I just want, I have to speak up, because this is an issue that I do know well. And the homeless population is growing, because as they're kicked to the curb, you see people who are on the street who are schizophrenic, who are not getting any services at all, and every day we walk by them, and every day the police drives by them, and every day, you know, they have no place, they can't find a toilet that will let them in. It's all connected. So how do you chip away at this huge boulder? There needs to be these connections here and here and here and here and here. I understand. Thank you. Okay. So you want to ask your question, and Lisa, I understand.
I totally respect that, because the medical field definitely needs improvement. I got sick from the vaccine 2 years now, one of the rare ones, and they pretty much discredit you and don't believe you, and there's no resources, you know, for any of that. But aside from that, this is about hate on the, you know, minorities, on the oppressed. It could be in any race. So I want to know, I appreciate that you're here and everybody here, that what's going on the inside, you know? How is there going to be more opportunities for immigrants to come here? Where is that coming from? Because I talk to them from that side. It's so hard to get a visa. You know what I'm saying? And they hate on immigrants. Hate in general. Everybody works so much. The economy's so high. Rent's crazy. Even as affordable housing, you know, people are stressed. You know, they gotta work so much to keep up. And that's what brings that hate too. So what's going on the inside? Because we want to go legal, but from the streets, we're not raised that way. You know, we're raised, you know, the system's crooked, the system's wicked. Why vote? Why, you know what I'm saying? But it seems like there is hope too. So I want to know what's going on the inside.
You know, there is a lot going on in the federal government, you know, in our Congress and our U.S. Senate. I know Chivla is working with our U.S. Senator Alex Padilla on a pathway to getting legal immigration and citizenship, right? Because we're stuck, right? There's no path, and that and it's going to be
like Eden and the
years
street
fight.
vendors trying to get a legal way to sell.
And at the state level, we've been trying to work on, a pathway to getting, permits for street vendors, right? And it still needs to, we're still working on, like you said, the food code is being updated. We continue every year. It's easier at the state level because every year we pass bills. The federal government, depending on who has the majorities, in both the Senate and Congress, and right now we have, a Republican speaker, and there's this national hate towards immigrants, and especially from Texas and Florida, governors and legislators there, much different than in California. But we continue to advocate and support those fights, but we know they're year-long, it's going to be years, right? And I meet with the organizations on the ground that are working with the policymakers in DC, and a lot of them are based here in LA, and they're out there, they go to DC every month, and they're advocating, and we work with them, okay, how can we be supportive, right? I wish those were California's decisions, because in our legislature, we would have a pathway of citizenship and to welcome, in Los Angeles, we welcome immigrants. We're providing services to the migrants that they're sending to LA for, in the buses from other states. But that's not true nationwide, and unfortunately, there's a lot of hate in these other states.
So is there a push forward, like a slight push forward, or your hands are completely tied?
Well, I mean, it's the federal government.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
From them. I mean, they're continuing to work on it. It depends. I think the results of the next elections, in who has the majority in each of those houses, because sometimes they're pushing it, but in the Senate, if there's it's 50-50. There's 100 senators. There might be a senator there's always the senator from West Virginia that won't vote on something like this.
So what do you recommend us as a community to do, like to help out with that push? You know what I'm saying? Like, not just a general answer, but really, like.
Well, one, I would think, first, we need I would think in our federal government, we need a Democratic majority. I am a Democrat, so I am speaking on behalf. Right now, we don't have that. We have a Republican speaker. And some races here in California can make the difference. That would be, there's a race in Bakersfield. There's a Republican congress member in Bakersfield. There's some in the central, another in the Central Valley, that if we get those to flip, at least our Congress will go back to Democrat. In the Senate, both of our senators in California are Dems and will be, but there are other states where they're like more purple. Volunteering on those campaigns, helping make phone calls, if that's something you want to do. There's some people that volunteer, remotely for other state campaigns. That's something you want to do.
People will argue, I'm not Republican or any of that stuff. They would say that the laws are too lenient, right, with Democrats. And we do see a lot of lenient stuff. I don't know where that's coming from, like with child molesters getting out, or
criminal justice.
Just letting them out the first day. Where does that come from? How is that going to get fixed, or what? You know how people like to stigmatize on Democrats over their lenient laws, that's Cali and all this.
There are some bills right now going through our state legislature. One of them that made the news was the child trafficking that didn't make it. It was to make it a felony, for individuals that are trafficking children, minors. I'm going to vote for it because I can't accept that we're going to be lenient on people that are taking children from our communities and trafficking them. And it's happening in our state. In our communities. It happens around here. And so it hasn't, I'll be able to vote for it in a few weeks. I'm not on the public safety committee, but I will vote for that.
All right.
I mean,
It sounds like you're doing, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your
I know she
interest.
has to leave, and I know Minerva has one last bit of information she wants to share, and that's about the police, which is a big, difficult issue in the community. When you talk about hate, Minerva, do you think that there is hate among police on the Latino community?
I don't want to take up the entire session, but as Diana mentioned, I have been advocating on behalf of Vanessa Marquez, who was shot and killed by the South Pasadena Police Department. August 30th will be 5 years since they killed her. The city of South Pasadena settled for $450,000 when I advocated for months for her from social services to help her. She did have compounded illnesses, 4 autoimmune diseases. She had a small intestine rupture. She was behind on her rent because she was disabled. She was losing her sight. Literally her ability to walk. She was having seizures every day. And no one listened to me. I couldn't get my union to listen to me, SAG-AFTRA. I couldn't listen, I couldn't get social services to listen to me. The only hope I got was if she was able to get into a convalescent home, but because she wasn't of senior age, that was my last hope for her. And the police came, even though she had asked for medical services, not the police. And the police came. After an hour and a half, they riled her up so much with a 5150 that, she had a fake BB gun. And because she wielded it, they shot her 16 times, even though she could barely walk and was going blind, coming out of a seizure, and they blamed her. Oh, she's crazy. Mental health. It's like, yeah, if you had to live every day with a sickness, how would you feel? And no one listens to you when you're asking for help. And so my journey has been that, I was trying to give the benefit of the doubt to the police. I was like, well, reform. Then as you get more and more into the movement, you see, my God, this is so corrupt. So corrupt. One of the police officers happened to be the son of a lieutenant colonel in the LAPD. And you go, that's why we couldn't get any information out of them for so long. Anyway, I don't want to take up too much time, but thanks to Black Lives Matter, Los Angeles, they listened to me. They have helped me advocate. They connected me to the ACLU, to the National Lawyers Guild, who have been able to help me fight the disinformation, because that's what it is. They say, oh, she had the BB gun. Well, why was the reason she had a BB gun? Why do you have 10 police officers in a disabled woman's apartment? Why do you need 10 officers to answer that call when you could have easily come in with social services, the mental health clinician that was there, they could have helped out and, de-escalated. But we don't want to hear that. Our community, sadly, is too pro-cop. Too many of our folks are like, well, it's the police, they did the right thing. No, they don't. They don't always have the answer. They don't. And I connected to the street vendors. I know that the National Lawyers Guild was helping out with Santa Monica with the street vendors at one point. And so that was another thing that I wanted to explore. You have had that connection to the ACLU, to National Lawyers Guild, those civil rights organizations that come, when nobody else listens. And then lastly, I want to just advocate for our community to stand up to police violence, especially us.
Can you make the point that in this process, you reached out to the Maldives, you reached out to the organizations that you think are in the community to help, you reached out to legislators, and no one would step up?
Yeah. And that's the reality that, where is our safety net? Because it came down to that. If somebody had listened to me even 3 months before, maybe she'd still be here.
can you explain the work that you have that led you to being support back and forth to now what you term as your family, the Latino families that have not received justice to this day?
Well, I have been connected to the Check the Sheriff Coalition. The Check the Sheriff Coalition is a family-led organization, coalitions of organizations that have come together to check the sheriff, literally. And through them, we have learned about mental health services, learned about, like I said, La Defensa, knowing about judges, knowing about policy. We were the ones that were able to pass Measure A, which is holding the sheriffs accountable through the Board of Supervisors. We did that work. So I want to just express my thanks to Diana. I don't want to take up too much more time, but knowing your rights, knowing who your representatives are, knowing policy, and I know it's a lot of freaking work, but knowing those connections, like Diana's trying to do, connect us to community. That's another point I wanted to make. Community is so important because sometimes the law doesn't listen to us. Sometimes representatives are all about themselves, with you in the exception. But, the realities of that we are human. But it's like, our community, thank God for Black Lives Matter. They came and helped me more than my own Latino people. They literally came to a South Pasadena council meeting on Wednesday.
Someone very notable came.
Yeah, Greg Akili, who's running for assembly member, came and spoke on behalf of Vanessa and saying,
some may not know.
Greg Akili has been an organizer in these circles for many years. He was trained by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and he's brought those skills to Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. And he spoke for Vanessa, and he said, we're here because if you had taken the time to listen to her, to give her services, she wouldn't be dead. She wouldn't be smeared in the press. And I want to bring it back to our vendors. I want to bring it back to that we speak up for the most vulnerable. That we speak up for people that don't have a voice, who are afraid. Because there is no safety net. And we are it. All of us, as a community. This is all we got. We got each other, have each other's backs, and that's it.
Can you speak quickly some of the families that you work with that have still not received the justice for their...
Well, that would be a very long list.
Okay.
The one that's closest to me is the family of Anthony Vargas. Anthony Vargas was shot and killed by the Sheriff's Department at Ramona Gardens. 5 years, it was literally 2 weeks before Vanessa got killed. They mistook him for a guy that was robbing somebody. And this kid was shot 13 times in the back, 2 in the head. And supposedly he had a gun. And I was at the trial. That supposed gun didn't have but like less than 2% of his DNA. But yet the sheriff's got off. And there's a possibility that the people that shot him are gang members of the Banditos gang in East LA. And yet again, the judge has they said that evidence couldn't be brought into the trial. So, police and the Latino community, we are by far, overwhelmingly, many of the victims. I think 80% of the people shot by police, along with our Black sisters and brothers, are shot by police, 80% in this county. And that should be unacceptable to everybody. If you're unarmed, if you're suffering from mental illness, you're sick, you're on the street, you're a street vendor, why is it okay to be killed? It shouldn't be.
What was the figure that you gave in your play, your current?
It's 80%.
No, you had a figure of how many cases there have been from can't remember the figure.
I mean, it's over 1,000 at this point. Over 1,000 victims of police violence.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories. I just wanted to comment on one of the things, based on my experience as a legislator, sometimes it feels maybe you're at, you call and they don't respond, but I know in my office we track the calls, and sometimes my district director is right here, Arturo, and he'll call and say, we got 200 calls about one issue, right? And, there's people in our community that will organize their friends and family, or there's usually organizations that are, call your legislator, right? And we track all of that, and that should get a response from your legislator. Other staff should be, calling the legislator and telling them. I mean, I get a weekly update on the calls that come into my office and what they're calling about, usually about different bills. And like you said, a lot of people, you're working, you have your kids, your family to take care of. You're not tracking every policy. There's 2,000 bills right now in the state legislature. There's no way you're tracking. But a lot of what I found my constituents, they have like maybe one issue area they really care about. Like you seem very passionate about criminal justice and mental health, and that's what they focus on, right? And they know what's going on just in that one area. And together, if the community, if we're all interested in different issue areas, that's how you get the message across. So but thank you. You seem like you're very involved leader, and you know what's going on, and thank you for your passion.
Well, I mean, the reality was there is no housing. There is no housing for somebody like Vanessa. I mean, she was living on SSI and a pension, but her medical bills were exorbitant. So that's the reality of, yes, I can see you can say, yes, call my office, but will you guarantee a house for somebody so vulnerable? And I'm not putting it on you.
No, I know. We're all of us, right? The state, the county, the city. There's a lot of us working on it, but it's not enough, right? There's still not enough housing available for us.
If I could touch on the DMH, because I worked for Family Housing Volunteers America for 5 years before I started the CIS agency with Linky. One of the founders of that, and it is my guys that our people, we get poverty in. I think you gotta use some street work. The state baptist grandchildren just want to take our money and say we're here to help our people running nonprofits that serve our population. Working for Family Housing, I started organizing our gente there. I see how Spanish-speaking people being mistreated. LA Family Housing, I see them all over the place. How great they are, how liberal. My God, the way they treat Spanish-speaking people, you would think what? We're back in the 30s. I'm being honest. I don't need to lie. I've been doing this 30 years, and I don't get paid to speak for anybody. I'm on my own here. I've been an activist for a lot of years, and I didn't know they said I got it. And a guy died on my hands in Christmas, and I just can't get over that. And I work for that show. You know how hard it is for a person to sit there and get mouth to mouth to a father when 2 babies are right there? I'm sitting here getting mouth to mouth, running up the stairs, breathing myself, trying to get this guy back to life. Because that agency gets $80 million a year, doesn't care about this Latino family as much as everybody else. Some of the case workers and case managers. And I'm talking about case managers who come from our streets, like yourselves, who are just barely getting the degrees, and the ones above them went to, I want to say these Ivy League colleges, or say, oh, we can't go down to those people. Let them come to my office. Let them come to my office. Really, you're right. More than one day a month, we need more for mental health. But I'm telling you, we're funding these agencies. I work for Goodwill Reentry. I told my brother, he's still manager there, I'm disgusted here, I'm out of here. Give him a 90-day, I'm leaving in 90 days, and then the region goes, oh, man, that's way too long. And you give it 2 weeks, I'm leaving 90 days because I want to make sure my people can take care of it.
Once a month is a phone call, it's not a one-on-one.
Imagine that.
Most of the mental health providers, they don't, you never sit across from them.
You understand?
The excuse was the pandemic, but we're well out of the pandemic.
What I'm trying to push is the money. To serve our community. I'm going to tell you, There needs some accountability for these things.
Okay, we will continue. Thank you all.
Thank you. That is my
Thank you, yes, thank you all. Who we all are. Thank you for weathering the storm here, delays and the storm that is impending. May it not be as strong as media is indicating. So, some people called, to her point about a larger room, some people called at the 11th hour, said they wanted to do storm prep. Chirla, of course, was in that mix of wanting to make sure that the immigrants are fine today. So I appreciate very much. The ones that are here are the diehards, and we thank you so much for taking the time out of the big storm coming to be here today. I appreciate it very much.